The penthouse on Fifth Avenue had 42 windows. Marcus Chen counted them once during the first sleepless night after the accident. 42 rectangles of bulletproof glass overlooking Central Park, the city sprawling beneath him like a kingdom he'd built with his own two hands. He was 34 years old and worth $3 billion. His name was synonymous with innovation. Chen Technologies had revolutionized cloud computing, put quantum encryption in every smartphone, made him the youngest self-made billionaire in New York. Forbes called him the man who could code the future. Time put him on their cover with the headline, "The Genius Who Never Sleeps." But none of that mattered anymore, because his son had never smiled. Not once. Not in 5 years. The accident happened on a Tuesday. Marcus was in Tokyo closing a $200 million deal when his phone rang at 3 in the morning. His wife's voice came through shaking, breaking, "Marcus, there's been an accident. You need to come home. Now." By the time his private jet landed at JFK, Catherine was in surgery. A drunk driver had blown through a red light, T-boned their car on Park Avenue. She'd thrown her body over their 2-year-old son, Ethan, absorbing the impact with her own spine. The doctors said she'd saved the boy's life. Then they said she wouldn't make it through the night. Marcus stood in that hospital hallway for 11 hours, hands pressed against white walls, praying to a God he'd stopped believing in years ago. Please, take anything else. Take the company, the money, everything. Just let her live. But God didn't bargain. Catherine died at sunrise. The last thing she said, barely a whisper through oxygen tubes, "Protect him. Promise me you'll protect Ethan." Marcus made that promise. He just didn't know how much it would cost. Ethan survived the crash with a fractured skull and massive head trauma. 3 surgeries, 2 months in pediatric ICU. The neurosurgeon's voice was gentle but final. "Mr. Chen, your son has severe cortical visual impairment. The trauma damaged the part of his brain that processes sight. He can see light and shadow, but shapes, faces, colors, those are gone. Permanently." Marcus stood there holding Ethan's tiny hand, tubes everywhere, machines beeping, and felt his world collapse for the second time in 60 days. "There must be something we can do," he said. "Surgery? Stem cells? Experimental treatments?" The doctor shook his head. "This isn't the eyes, Mr. Chen. It's the brain. The visual cortex is too damaged. I'm sorry." They came home to the penthouse 3 weeks later, the place Catherine had decorated with floor-to-ceiling windows because she loved natural light, because she wanted their son to grow up watching the city change seasons, watching snowfall and sunsets and the life happening 40 stories below. Now those windows were just cruel reminders of everything Ethan couldn't see. The boy was 2 years old, small for his age, with his mother's dark hair and his father's serious eyes that no longer focused on anything. He didn't cry, didn't reach for toys, didn't turn toward sounds or voices. He just sat wherever Marcus placed him, staring at nothing, silent as stone. The specialists came in waves, pediatric neurologists from Johns Hopkins, vision therapists from UCLA, experts who flew in from Switzerland, from Singapore, from everywhere Marcus's money could reach. They brought equipment, ran tests, tried stimulation therapies, lights, sounds, textures designed to rebuild neural pathways. Nothing worked. "Your son's brain has essentially shut down visual processing," one doctor explained during a consultation that cost $15,000. "He's retreated inward. The trauma, losing his mother, the physical pain, it's too much. He's built walls we can't break through." "So what do I do?" Marcus asked, his voice hollow. The doctor's answer was the same they all gave. "Make him comfortable, build routines, hope for small improvements. But prepare yourself, Mr. Chen. This may be permanent." 3 years passed like that. routines, schedules, physical therapy 3 times a week, occupational therapy twice, speech therapy that Ethan never responded to because he didn't speak at all, not a word since the accident. Marcus hired the best caregivers money could buy. They lasted 3 months at most. Some couldn't handle the silence. Others grew frustrated when nothing they tried made a difference. One woman told him honestly, "Mr. Chen, I've worked with special needs children for 20 years, but your son, he's not there. It's like caring for a beautiful statue." After she left, Marcus stood in Ethan's room, watching the boy sit motionless in his chair by the window. 5 years old now, should be in kindergarten, learning letters, making friends, running through playgrounds. Instead, he was frozen, trapped in a darkness Marcus couldn't reach. That's when Marcus stopped believing in miracles, started believing in survival instead. He threw himself into work. 18-hour days, board meetings, product launches, acquisition deals that required his full attention so he wouldn't have to think about the empty penthouse, the silent son, the wife who died saving a child, who seemed determined not to live anyway. The staff moved through the apartment like ghosts. Chef preparing meals Ethan barely touched. Housekeeper keeping rooms spotless that no one used. Physical therapist coming 3 times a week to move limbs that didn't resist or respond. Marcus would come home late, check on Ethan, always in the same position, always staring at nothing, then pour himself 3 fingers of whiskey and stand at those 42 windows watching the city glow beneath him, wondering how he'd become a man with everything except the one thing that mattered, his son's smile. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. Marcus Chen didn't trust anyone anymore. That lesson came hard and expensive. The first caregiver stole Catherine's jewelry, $30,000 worth of heirloom pieces, gone before Marcus even noticed. The second one leaked medical records to a tabloid that ran the headline, "Tech Billionaire's Brain-Damaged Son, Exclusive Photos." The third gave Ethan medication doses she'd doubled without permission, nearly sending the boy into seizure. After that, Marcus installed cameras everywhere. The security company, ex-CIA contractors he paid $250,000 annually, wired the entire penthouse. Living room, hallways, Ethan's bedroom, playroom, kitchen. 23 cameras total, motion activated, recording everything in high definition, backed up to encrypted servers in 3 different countries. Marcus could access the feeds from anywhere, his office computer, his phone, his tablet. At first, he told himself it was about safety, about protecting Ethan from people who saw a vulnerable child and a wealthy father as opportunity. But over time, watching became something else, a ritual, a compulsion. Every night, no matter where he was, conference room in Seoul, hotel suite in London, private jet somewhere over the Atlantic, Marcus would open the app and scroll through the day's footage, fast-forwarding through hours of nothing. Physical therapist moving Ethan's limbs, housekeeper tidying already tidy rooms, chef preparing meals that went mostly uneaten. He was looking for something, proof that his son was still in there. A flicker of response, a moment of connection, anything that suggested the boy wasn't completely gone. He never found it. The staff knew about the cameras. Marcus made that clear during interviews. "Everything is recorded. I review the footage daily. If you have a problem with that, this isn't the position for you." Most people didn't have a problem with it. Not when the salary was 6 figures for what was essentially babysitting one quiet child in a luxury penthouse. But they also didn't last. Something about the surveillance, the silence, the weight of that gorgeous apartment that felt more like a mausoleum. It drove people away eventually. By the time Ethan turned 5, Marcus had been through 11 caregivers. 11 people who'd promised they could handle it, who'd signed NDAs and passed background checks and came with stellar references. 11 people who'd left within 6 months, sometimes less, always with the same explanation. "I'm sorry, Mr. Chen, I just can't do this anymore." He was interviewing number 12 when his assistant mentioned someone different had applied. "She doesn't have the typical credentials," Linda said carefully, sliding the resume across his desk. "No formal experience with special needs children, but she was a hospice nurse for 7 years. Her references are exceptional, and—" Linda hesitated. She asked if she could meet Ethan before the interview, said she needed to know if she could help him first. Marcus looked up sharply. "Meet him first? She said she doesn't want to waste your time if she can't connect with your son." That was new. Every other applicant had focused on salary, benefits, schedule flexibility. No one asked about Ethan first. "What's her name?" "Josephine Reyes, goes by Joe." Marcus studied the resume. 32 years old, hospice nurse until 9 months ago, gap in employment, brief cover letter that said, "I recently lost someone I loved deeply. I understand grief. I believe I could help your son carry his." Something about that last line caught him. Not fix or cure or heal, all the words doctors and therapists used. Help him carry his, like grief was something you didn't overcome, just learned to live with. "Send her up," Marcus said. Joe Reyes arrived at 5 p.m. on a Thursday. Marcus watched her on the security feed before she even entered the building. A small woman, maybe 5'3", dark hair pulled into a simple braid, wearing jeans and a cardigan that had seen better days. She stood outside the building for 2 full minutes before going in, head tilted back, looking up at the 40-story tower like she was gathering courage. When Linda brought her into Marcus's office, Joe's first words were, "Thank you for seeing me, Mr. Chen. I know I'm not qualified on paper." Her voice was soft but steady, brown eyes direct, honest, hands clasped in front of her, not fidgeting. "Why do you want this job?" Marcus asked. He didn't bother with pleasantries, didn't have time for them. Joe took a breath. "Because 9 months ago I lost my daughter, leukemia. She was 6 years old." Her voice didn't waver, but Marcus saw her fingers tighten. "I was her hospice nurse, took care of her until the end. And when she died, I realized I couldn't go back to that work, couldn't watch other children slip away." "I'm sorry for your loss," Marcus said quietly, "but that doesn't explain why you'd want to work with my son." "Because he's not dying, Mr. Chen. He's trapped." Joe's eyes met his. "And I know what it's like to be trapped in grief so heavy you stop trying to escape. Your son lost his mother, lost his sight. Maybe he thinks if he stays still enough, quiet enough, none of it's real." Marcus felt something crack in his chest. 5 years, and no one had ever described Ethan that way. Trapped. "Can I meet him?" Joe asked. "Just 5 minutes. If I can't connect with him, I'll leave. No hard feelings." Marcus hesitated, then pulled up the security feed on his tablet. Ethan was in his room, sitting in his usual chair by the window. The afternoon sun streamed in, light he couldn't see, warming skin that barely seemed to register sensation anymore. "Follow me," Marcus said. They walked down the long hallway, past Catherine's untouched office, past the guest rooms no one used, to Ethan's door. Marcus opened it quietly. Ethan didn't move, didn't turn, just sat there, small body swallowed by the oversized chair, staring at nothing. Joe didn't speak at first. She just stood in the doorway, watching. Then slowly, quietly, she walked to where Ethan sat. Marcus tensed, ready to intervene if she touched the boy wrong, moved too fast, did anything that might. Joe knelt on the floor beside Ethan's chair, didn't touch him, just knelt there at his level and began to hum a lullaby, something soft and Spanish, melody rising and falling like waves. Ethan's head tilted, just barely, the smallest movement, but Marcus saw it. Joe kept humming, then softly, speaking between the notes. "Hello, sweetheart. My name is Joe. You don't have to look at me. You don't have to do anything. I just wanted to sit with you for a minute." She settled onto the floor, back against the wall, still humming occasionally, but mostly just present. Quiet. No demands, no expectations. 5 minutes passed. Ethan didn't move again, didn't acknowledge her in any visible way, but when Joe stood to leave, she placed her hand gently on the floor near Ethan's chair. Not touching him, just close enough that he might feel the warmth, and whispered, "I'll come back if you'd like. No pressure, just if you want company." Then she left. Marcus followed her to the elevator, mind racing. "He didn't respond to you." "He heard me," Joe said simply. "That's enough for now." "How do you know?" She looked at him with those steady brown eyes. "Because 5 years of silence doesn't break in 5 minutes, Mr. Chen. It breaks one moment at a time." The elevator doors opened. Joe stepped inside, then turned back. "I don't need this job for the money," she said quietly. "My daughter had life insurance. I'm not wealthy, but I can survive. What I need is a reason to wake up in the morning, to matter again." Her voice cracked just slightly. "If you'll let me, I'd like to try helping your son find his way back. Not because I think I can fix him, but because I know what it's like to lose everything and need someone to just sit in the darkness with you until you're ready to find the light." The doors started to close. "Wait," Marcus said. They opened again. "You're hired. Start Monday." Joe Reyes showed up Monday morning at 7 a.m. She carried one small canvas bag and wore the same practical clothes: jeans, comfortable shoes, a sweater that looked handmade. Marcus's head housekeeper, Mrs. Park, met her in the foyer with barely concealed skepticism. Mrs. Park had been with the family since before Catherine died. She'd seen 11 caregivers come and go. "Mr. Chen's morning routine," Mrs. Park said briskly, walking Joe through the massive apartment. "Wake Ethan at 7, help him dress. He doesn't resist, but he doesn't assist either. Bring him to the breakfast table by 7:30. Chef prepares meals according to the nutritionist's plan. Ethan will eat if you put food in his mouth, but won't feed himself." Joe listened, nodding, not interrupting. 8 o'clock, physical therapy. Therapist arrives, works with him for 1 hour. 9:30, occupational therapy, buttons, zippers, holding objects. He doesn't progress, but we maintain the routine. 11 o'clock, sensory activities, music, textures, whatever you think might stimulate response. They reached Ethan's room. The boy was already awake, sitting in his chair, wearing the same blank expression Marcus saw every day on the security feeds. "He doesn't nap anymore," Mrs. Park continued. "Doesn't play, doesn't ask for anything because he doesn't speak. Make him comfortable. That's all Mr. Chen expects." Joe set down her bag. "Has anyone tried teaching him tactile sign language? Touch-based communication for blind, deaf individuals?" Mrs. Park frowned. "Ethan isn't deaf, but he doesn't respond to verbal cues. Maybe his brain needs a different input, something physical." "We've tried everything, Miss Reyes. Braille, sensory toys, music therapy. Nothing works." Joe nodded slowly, then she walked over to Ethan, knelt beside him like she'd done during their first meeting. "Good morning, Ethan," she said softly. "It's Joe. I was here last week. I'm going to be spending time with you now. Is that okay?" No response. Joe reached out slowly, telegraphing the movement even though he couldn't see it. She gently touched his hand, just resting her fingers on his. Ethan didn't pull away, but he didn't respond either. "I'm going to help you get dressed now," Joe said. "I'll tell you everything before I do it. No surprises." She did exactly that. narrating every movement, every touch, giving Ethan time to process. When she finished, she said, "You did great, sweetheart. Now let's go have breakfast." Mrs. Park watched from the doorway, lips pressed thin. She'd seen this before, enthusiasm in the beginning, hope that would crumble within weeks when the boy showed no progress. But something about Joe was different. She didn't treat Ethan like a broken thing that needed fixing. She treated him like a person who needed company. Marcus watched from his office, security feed on his second monitor, while he reviewed quarterly reports on his primary screen. He saw Joe at breakfast, sitting beside Ethan, talking to him like he might answer, describing the food: scrambled eggs this morning, warm and soft, orange juice fresh squeezed. Can you smell it? Even though Ethan showed no reaction, he watched physical therapy, where Joe sat on the floor instead of standing with the therapist, keeping herself at Ethan's level. When the therapist moved the boy's legs, Joe touched his shoulder lightly, a steady presence. During sensory time, Joe pulled out a small wooden box from her bag. She opened it, revealed textured fabric squares, silk, burlap, velvet, sandpaper. "My daughter made these," Joe said softly to Ethan. "Before she got too sick, she loved touching different things, collecting textures. I thought maybe you'd like to feel them." She took Ethan's hand. He let her, passive, and guided his fingers over silk. Smooth, cool, then burlap, rough, scratchy, then velvet, soft, warm. Ethan's fingers twitched against the velvet, just once, barely noticeable, but Marcus saw it on the feed. He leaned forward, heart suddenly loud in his ears. Joe saw it too. She didn't make a big deal of it, didn't exclaim or celebrate, just said quietly, "You like that one? Velvet? I'll remember that, sweetheart." She kept working through textures, patient, unhurried. When nothing else got a response, she returned to the velvet, let Ethan's fingers rest on it. His hand moved, just slightly, a small exploratory touch. Marcus's breath caught. That afternoon, Joe sang to Ethan while he sat in his chair, the same Spanish lullaby from her first visit. Marcus couldn't understand the words, but the melody was beautiful. Sad but warm, like a memory of safety. Ethan's head tilted again. That small movement. By evening, Marcus had reviewed the entire day's footage 3 times, looking for something, anything that made sense. 11 caregivers hadn't gotten any response in months of trying. Joe got 3 small reactions in one day. Coincidence? Or was she actually reaching him? That night, after Joe left, Marcus went to Ethan's room. The boy was in bed, eyes open, staring at the ceiling. "Hey, buddy," Marcus said softly, sitting on the edge of the mattress. "Did you have a good day?" No response. Never was. But Marcus tried anyway. He always did. "Joe seems nice. She brought you some things to touch. Did you like them?" Nothing. Marcus's throat tightened. 5 years of one-sided conversations. 5 years of talking to a son who couldn't or wouldn't answer. "I miss you," he whispered, the words cracking. "I miss your mom. I miss who we were supposed to be." He touched Ethan's hair, soft and dark like Catherine's. The boy didn't flinch, didn't lean into the touch, just lay there, present but absent. Marcus left before he started crying. By the end of week 1, Joe had broken half the rules. She stopped following the rigid schedule. Let Ethan eat breakfast when he seemed hungry instead of forcing 7:30. Let him sit in different places, the floor, the window seat, even just lying on a blanket in the living room, instead of always in that chair. "Routines feel safe," Mrs. Park protested. "Ethan needs structure." "Ethan needs variety," Joe said gently. "He's not a machine. He's a little boy whose world got frozen. We need to introduce small changes so his brain remembers things, can change safely." Week 2, Joe stopped putting food in Ethan's mouth. Instead, she'd describe it, let him smell it, then guide his hand to the plate, and leave the spoon there. He won't feed himself, the chef warned. He'll starve. But Joe waited, described the food, the texture, the taste, touched Ethan's hand to remind him the spoon was there, and on day 10, impossibly, his fingers closed around it, lifted it, awkwardly, shakily, but he lifted it toward his mouth. Marcus nearly dropped his phone watching the feed. "Good job, sweetheart," Joe said, voice steady even though Marcus could hear the emotion underneath. "You did that, all by yourself." Week 3, Joe introduced something new. Sound maps. She'd take Ethan to different parts of the apartment, sit with him, and describe everything she heard. "That's the refrigerator humming, low sound, steady. That's the elevator down the hall. Higher pitch, moves up and down. That's a car horn from the street, far away but sharp." She'd touch his hand while she described each sound, creating associations, physical touch paired with auditory input, building bridges his brain might actually cross. "My daughter couldn't see at the end," Joe told Ethan one afternoon. They were sitting by the living room window, 40 stories up, the city sounds drifting in. The cancer affected her vision, so we learned to experience the world differently, through touch, through sound, through feeling. She took his hand, placed it on the window glass. "Feel that? It's cold because it's winter outside. Now listen, can you hear the wind? It's pushing against the glass, making it vibrate just a little." Ethan's head tilted toward the window. Marcus watched from his office, heart in his throat. His son was listening, really listening. That night, Marcus called Joe into his study after Ethan was asleep. "You're not following the protocols," he said. Joe nodded. "I know. If you want me to stop—" "No." Marcus cut her off. "I want you to keep doing exactly what you're doing." She looked surprised. "I've reviewed every minute of footage," Marcus continued. "In 3 weeks, you've gotten more response from him than anyone has in 3 years. How?" Joe was quiet for a moment, then, "Because I'm not trying to fix him, Mr. Chen. I'm trying to meet him where he is." "What's the difference?" Everyone else treated his silence like a problem to solve. But silence isn't a problem, it's a choice. Your son chose safety and stillness because everything else hurt too much. Her eyes were steady, honest. "I'm showing him that moving doesn't have to hurt, that small changes can be safe, that he can trust the world again, one texture, one sound, one moment at a time." Something in Marcus's chest cracked open. This woman understood his son in ways Marcus didn't, in ways the expensive specialists with their degrees and theories never had. "Keep going," he said quietly. "Whatever you're doing, don't stop." Week 5, Marcus stopped pretending to work. He'd open his laptop, pull up spreadsheets, join conference calls, but his eyes always drifted to the second monitor, to the security feed, to his son and the woman who was somehow bringing him back to life. He watched Joe introduce Ethan to music through vibration. She'd place his hand on a portable speaker, play songs with deep bass lines, let him feel the rhythm pulsing through his palm. The first time Ethan's fingers tapped, once, twice, matching the beat, Marcus had to leave his office, walked to the bathroom, locked the door, and cried for 10 minutes straight. His son was moving with intention. After 5 years of stillness, Ethan was choosing to move. By week 7, the changes were undeniable. Ethan fed himself now, slowly, messily, but independently. He'd reach for his cup when thirsty, turn his head toward Joe's voice when she entered a room, lean slightly into her touch when she guided him somewhere new. The physical therapist noticed during a session. "Mr. Chen, Ethan's muscle response has improved dramatically. He's engaging instead of resisting. What changed?" "New caregiver," Marcus said simply. "Well, whatever she's doing, it's working." Marcus knew what she was doing. He'd watched every minute. Joe didn't push, didn't demand. She invited, offered, waited. When Ethan resisted, she'd back off immediately. That's okay, sweetheart. We'll try again later. No frustration, no disappointment, just patience. When he showed the smallest progress, moving his hand toward food, lifting his head at a sound, she'd acknowledge it gently. You did that beautifully. Not over-the-top celebration that might overwhelm him, just quiet recognition. She treated him like a person trapped underground who needed a gentle rope, not someone broken who needed fixing, and it was working. Week 8, Joe introduced something new during sensory time. She brought a small fountain, the kind that circulated water over smooth stones. This was my daughter's, she told Ethan softly. She loved the sound of water, said it sounded like peace. She turned it on. The gentle trickle filled the room. Then she took Ethan's hand and guided it into the water, cool, flowing, moving across his skin. Ethan gasped, a small sound, barely audible, but the first sound Marcus had heard his son make in 5 years that wasn't breathing. Joe kept his hand in the water, let him feel it. Water remembers how to move even when everything else stops, she said quietly. Just like you're remembering, sweetheart. Little by little. Ethan's fingers moved through the water, exploring, testing. Then he did something that made Marcus's world tilt. He smiled. Not big, not joyful, just a small, soft curve of his lips. But it was there. Marcus's hands shook as he stared at the screen. 5 years. 5 years of blank expressions, and his son just smiled. He grabbed his phone, pulled up the footage, rewound it, watched again. The smile was there, real, undeniable. His son could feel happiness. Week 9, Marcus came home early from the office. He'd planned to work from home that afternoon, review some contracts in his study, while monitoring the feeds like usual. But when he walked into the penthouse at 2 p.m., he heard something that stopped him cold. Laughter. Faint, tentative, but laughter. His son's laughter. Marcus stood frozen in the foyer, briefcase still in his hand, trying to remember if he'd ever heard that sound before. Not since the accident. Maybe not even before. He followed it to the living room, stood in the doorway, completely still. Joe and Ethan were on the floor. She'd spread out different objects, stones, shells, fabric, wooden blocks, and she was playing a game. Okay, sweetheart, find the smooth one, Joe said. Take your time. Ethan's small hand moved over the objects, touching each one carefully. When he reached the stone, worn smooth by water, his fingers stopped. You found it, Joe laughed. You're so good at this. And Ethan laughed too, a breathy, uncertain sound, like he was remembering how. Then Joe said something that shattered Marcus completely. Now find the shell. It feels like your mama's necklace. Remember when I let you touch it? The one in the picture on your dresser. Ethan's hand moved unerringly to the shell, picked it up, held it close to his face, exploring the ridges with his fingertips. Mama, he whispered. The word was rough, unpracticed, but clear. Marcus's briefcase hit the floor. Joe and Ethan both turned toward the sound. Ethan's face shifted, uncertain. Joe's eyes widened when she saw Marcus standing there. Mr. Chen, I didn't know you... He spoke. Marcus's voice came out strangled. He said, Mama. Ethan's head turned toward his father's voice, and then, impossibly, the boy lifted his hand, reached out, not toward Joe, toward Marcus. Daddy, Ethan whispered. Marcus crossed the room in 3 strides, dropped to his knees, pulled his son into his arms. Ethan didn't pull away, didn't go stiff like he usually did. He leaned into the embrace, small hands clutching Marcus's shirt. I'm here, Marcus choked out. I'm here, buddy, I'm right here. He looked up at Joe through tears. She was crying too, one hand pressed over her mouth. How? Marcus whispered. How did you do this? Joe shook her head. I didn't do anything. He was always there, Mr. Chen. He just needed someone to wait for him. Marcus held his son, feeling the small body breathe, the small hands hold on, and realized something profound. He'd spent 5 years trying to pull Ethan out of the darkness. Joe had simply sat in the darkness with him until he was ready to walk out on his own. That night, after Ethan fell asleep, Marcus found Joe in the kitchen making tea. "Thank you," he said. The words felt inadequate, insufficient for what she'd given him. "You don't need to thank me." "Yes, I do." Marcus stepped closer. "You gave me my son back." Joe turned, met his eyes. He was never gone, just waiting. "For you." Something passed between them, understanding, connection, two people who'd lost everything learning to hope again. "Mr. Chen," "Marcus, please, after everything, just Marcus." Joe smiled slightly. "Marcus, your son is extraordinary. He's fighting so hard to come back. You should be proud." "I am," his voice dropped, "and I'm grateful, more than you know." For a moment they just stood there, the massive penthouse quiet around them, 42 windows reflecting, the city lights, and something new growing in the space between grief and healing, something that felt dangerously like hope. By week 10, Ethan was speaking in simple sentences. "Joe, water, please." "Daddy, where are you?" "Music, more music." His world was expanding. He'd walk now if someone held his hand, exploring rooms through touch and sound. He'd laugh when Joe played certain songs, request his favorite textures, ask questions about his mother. Marcus watched it all, proud, grateful, amazed, and slowly, painfully, jealous. It started small. Ethan calling for Joe when he woke up instead of Marcus, reaching for her hand instead of his father's when scared, laughing at something Joe said while barely responding when Marcus tried the same thing. "She's been here 10 weeks, Marcus thought one evening, watching the security feed as Ethan cuddled against Joe during story time. "I've been here his whole life." But she'd given Ethan what Marcus couldn't. She'd reached him where Marcus had failed. The thought twisted like a knife. One afternoon, Marcus came home to find Ethan sitting at the piano, Catherine's piano, untouched since she died, with Joe beside him. She was guiding his hands to the keys, letting him feel the vibrations. "Your mama played this," Joe said softly. "Every morning before you were born, she'd play and sing to you." "Mama sang?" Ethan asked. "The most beautiful songs." Marcus stood in the doorway, chest tight. He'd never told Ethan those things, never shared those memories. He'd been too afraid of his own pain to give his son those gifts. But Joe had. The jealousy grew. Marcus tried to fight it, tried to be rational. She's helping him, that's what matters. But every time Ethan chose Joe over him, every time his son responded to her, while barely acknowledging Marcus, the wound deepened. Until the morning Marcus walked into Ethan's room and heard 3 words that broke him. "I love you, Joe." Ethan was hugging her, his small face pressed against her shoulder, and Joe was holding him back, tears in her eyes. "I love you too, sweetheart." Marcus stood there, something cold and ugly rising in his chest. His son had never said those words to him, not once, not ever, but he'd said them to her. That afternoon, Marcus called Joe into his study. His mind was spinning, heart racing with emotions he didn't want to name. "We need to talk about boundaries," he said, voice harder than he intended. Joe looked confused. "Boundaries? You're getting too close to Ethan. It's inappropriate." Her face went pale. "I don't understand." "He's becoming too dependent on you. What happens when you leave, when you find another job? He'll be devastated." "I'm not leaving," Joe said quietly. "Everyone leaves." Marcus's voice rose. "You think you're different? You think you'll stay forever? You're an employee, Joe, that's all." The words were cruel. He knew it even as he said them, but the jealousy, the fear, the pain of watching his son love someone else, it poured out like poison. "Is this about Ethan?" Jo asked, her voice shaking. Or about you? Excuse me? You're upset because he's bonding with me, because I've helped him in ways you couldn't. You're fired, Marcus said coldly. Jo stared at him. What? You're fired. Pack your things. I'll have my assistant send your final check. Marcus, please get out of my house. Jo left that afternoon. Ethan was in physical therapy when she went, didn't even get to say goodbye. When he came out and asked for her, Marcus had to tell him, Jo had to go, buddy. She won't be coming back. Ethan's face crumpled. Why? Because it's better this way. But it wasn't better. Over the next 3 days, Ethan regressed completely, stopped speaking, stopped feeding himself, stopped responding to touch or sound. He returned to that chair by the window, staring at nothing, silent as stone, and Marcus realized, too late, what he'd destroyed. Day 4, without Jo, Marcus found Ethan in the bathroom at 3 a.m. The boy had somehow made his way there alone in the darkness, was sitting on the cold tile floor, rocking back and forth, making a sound Marcus had never heard before. A keening, broken whimper. Buddy, what are you doing? Marcus knelt beside him, tried to touch his shoulder. Ethan flinched away violently. Jo, he whispered, want Jo. She's not coming back, son. I'm here. Daddy's here. No. Ethan's voice was fierce, desperate. Jo, need Jo. He'd never asked for Marcus like that, never needed him that way. Marcus carried his son back to bed, but Ethan wouldn't settle, just lay there whispering Jo's name until exhaustion finally pulled him under. Marcus sat in the hallway outside Ethan's room, head in his hands, and finally let himself see the truth. He'd fired Jo because his son loved her, because in 10 weeks she'd accomplished what 5 years of Marcus's money and desperation couldn't. Because watching his son choose her felt like losing Catherine all over again. He'd destroyed the only good thing in Ethan's life because his own pride couldn't handle being second. Mrs. Park found him there at dawn, took one look at his face and said what everyone was thinking. You made a terrible mistake, Mr. Chen. I know. That boy was finally healing, finally coming back to life. And you ripped away the one person who understood him. I know. Marcus's voice broke. I know. So what are you going to do about it? Marcus looked up at her. This woman who'd watched him spiral for 5 years, who'd seen him at his worst. I'm going to fix it, he said. Whatever it takes. Jo lived in Queens, a 4th-floor walk-up in a building that had seen better decades. Marcus found the address through payroll records, drove there himself because this was something he had to do alone. The neighborhood was nothing like his world. Cracked sidewalks, corner bodegas, laundry hanging from fire escapes. He felt every eye on him as he parked his Mercedes, walked to her, building, climbed stairs that smelled like cooking and age. He knocked on 4C, waited. The door opened, but it wasn't Jo. A woman in her 60s, tired eyes, Jo's nose and chin. Her mother. Yes? She looked him up and down, and Marcus saw recognition flash across her face. Then anger. You're him, the man who fired my daughter. Ma'am, I need to speak with Jo, please. She doesn't want to see you. I understand, but do you? The woman's voice was sharp. Do you understand what it cost her to take that job? She was barely surviving after losing Sophia, barely getting out of bed. Then she found your son, found purpose again, gave everything to help that child. Her eyes blazed. And you threw her away like garbage. You're right, I was wrong, but I need to make this right. For who? For you? For your guilt? For my son. Marcus's voice cracked. Ethan stopped speaking again, stopped eating. He sits in that chair all day calling for her. He needs Jo. The woman's expression softened slightly. My daughter gave her heart to that boy, and you broke them both. I know, please just let me talk to her. Movement behind the mother. Jo appeared, wearing sweatpants and an old t-shirt, eyes red from crying. "It's okay, Mama," she said quietly. She looked at Marcus. "You should go, Mr. Chen." "Joe, please. You made yourself clear. I was an employee, that's all." Her voice wavered. "I let myself forget that, got too attached. That was my mistake." "It wasn't a mistake. You saved him. You saved us both. And you fired me the moment it threatened your control." Joe's eyes filled with tears. "You know what hurts most? I thought you understood. I thought you saw what I saw in Ethan, a person who needed love, not management, but you only saw competition." "You're right, about all of it." Marcus stepped closer. "I was jealous, terrified. Watching my son love you felt like losing him, like losing Catherine again. I convinced myself I was protecting him, but I was protecting myself." "I don't need your confession, Mr. Chen. I need—" Her voice broke. "I needed to matter, to help someone the way I couldn't help Sophia. And for 10 weeks, I thought I had that." "You did. You do. Ethan loves you." "That's why I can't come back." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "Because when you fired me, you taught him that love isn't safe, that people leave. He was just starting to trust again, and you destroyed it." "Then help me fix it," Marcus begged. "Please, I'll do anything." Joe shook her head. "I'm sorry. I can't watch you break that boy's heart again. I already lost one child. I can't lose another." She closed the door. Marcus stood in that dim hallway, listening to Joe cry on the other side, and felt his own tears fall. He'd come here expecting money or apologies to be enough. But this wasn't about money. It was about trust he'd shattered, love he'd weaponized, hope he'd killed. And for once in his life, Marcus Chen had no idea how to fix what he'd broken. Marcus returned home to find Ethan in his room, sitting at his desk. Not in his chair, at his desk, surrounded by crayons and paper. The boy was drawing. Marcus stepped closer, looked at the picture. Simple shapes, a big rectangle, the window, a small circle with lines, himself, and another circle, separate, on the other side of the paper. Joe. Between them, Ethan had drawn a black scribble, something dividing them. "Hey, buddy," Marcus said softly. Ethan's hand stopped. "Did you find Joe?" "I did, but she's not ready to come back yet." "Because of you." It wasn't a question. Marcus sat down slowly. "Yes, because of me." Ethan put down the crayon, turned his face toward Marcus's voice. "You made her leave." "I did." "Why? How do you explain jealousy to a 5-year-old? How do you confess that you pushed away the person who saved his life because you couldn't handle feeling second?" "I was scared," Marcus said finally. "Scared that you loved her more than me." Ethan was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Joe taught me about Mama, about music and water and touching the world. She taught me it's safe to feel things." "I know. You're my daddy, but Joe helped me find my voice." Ethan's small hand reached out, found Marcus's. "I need her, Daddy. Please." Something in Marcus's chest cracked open completely. "What if I can't get her back?" "Try harder." Marcus tried harder. He went back to Queens every day for a week, sat outside Joe's building like some desperate fool, waiting for glimpses of her, left notes under her door, called her phone until she blocked his number. On day 8, her mother came out. "You're persistent," she said. "I won't give up." She studied him, then sighed. "My daughter loved that boy. Still does. Cries every night asking if he's okay. He's not. Neither am I." "What are you offering, Mr. Chen?" "More money, better hours, a family." The word came out before Marcus could stop it, but it felt true. "Not as an employee, as someone who belongs with us." The mother's expression shifted. "You asking her to be a mother to your son?" "I'm asking her to be who she already is, the person who saw him when no one else could, who loved him when I couldn't." Marcus's voice broke. "I'm asking her to save us one more time." The mother disappeared inside. returned 5 minutes later with Joe. She looked exhausted, heartbroken, but she came. "One chance," Joe said quietly. "You get one chance, Marcus. If you hurt him again, I won't, I swear. And me? Because I can't go back to being just an employee. I can't love that boy halfway." Marcus stepped closer. "Then don't. Love him completely. Stay, not for a paycheck, as family." Joe searched his face. "And you? What do you want?" "Everything." That was the truth. Somewhere between watching her heal his son and seeing her strength in the face of grief, Marcus had fallen in love with this woman. But that wasn't what mattered right now. "I want Ethan to be whole," Marcus said. "And he won't be without you." Joe nodded slowly. "Okay, but we do this different. No more surveillance. No more treating him like a project. We raise him together, with trust. Whatever you need." When Joe walked through the penthouse door, Ethan was sitting at the window. "Ethan," she said softly, his head whipped around. "Joe." "I'm here, sweetheart." He ran, actually ran across the room, crashed into her arms. Joe caught him, held him tight, both of them crying. "You came back," Ethan sobbed. "You came back." "I'm not leaving again, I promise." Marcus watched from the doorway, tears streaming down his face. 6 months later, the penthouse felt different, lighter. The curtains stayed open, music played, laughter echoed through rooms that had been silent for years. Ethan was 7 now, still blind, but thriving. He read Braille, played piano, ran through the apartment with confidence. Joe had taught him to navigate his world through sound and touch, transformed darkness into an adventure instead of a prison. And Marcus had learned to let go, to trust, to be present instead of watching from cameras. One evening, he found Joe and Ethan in the music room. Catherine's piano. Joe was playing while Ethan sat beside her, hands on the wood, feeling the vibrations. Marcus joined them, put his hand beside Ethan's. "Daddy," Ethan smiled. "You feel it?" "I do, buddy." Joe looked at Marcus over Ethan's head. Something warm and sure passed between them. Later, after Ethan fell asleep, Marcus found Joe in the kitchen. "Thank you," he said, "for coming back, for not giving up on us. Thank you for fighting for what mattered." Marcus stepped closer. "I need to tell you something." "What?" "I love you." The words felt terrifying and right. Not as Ethan's caregiver, as the woman who saved my son, who taught me how to be a father, who showed me that broken things can heal if you're patient enough. Joe's eyes filled with tears. "Marcus, you don't have to say it back. I just needed you to know." She smiled. "I love you too. Have for months." He kissed her, gentle, grateful, full of promise. 1 year later, they stood in Catherine's garden, the memorial garden Marcus had built on the penthouse terrace. Ethan held both their hands, Marcus on one side, Joe on the other. "Mama's here, isn't she?" Ethan asked. "Always," Marcus said softly. "I think she sent Joe," Ethan said simply. "When she couldn't stay, she sent someone who could." Joe squeezed his hand, tears falling. They stood together, 3 broken people who'd found wholeness in each other and felt something sacred in the evening air. Peace, family, love that survives even darkness. And somewhere beyond the garden, beyond the 42 windows, beyond the city lights stretching forever, Marcus swore he felt Catherine smile. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.